Alafia, my dear seekers and darklings, and welcome for the video for the new moon in Scorpio. Today is actually the day of, so you will be seeing this tonight. Now, there's a few things happening, right? Just to start us off, first and foremost, the sun and the moon are in the same place because that's the concept of a new moon, both in Scorpio, but they are also conjunct Mars. Please take note of this. We will discuss it a little bit more a little further on in the video. Next, we also have that there's a T-square between Saturn, Lilith, and Mercury. Saturn and Lilith are the opposition in the T-square. In case you're not familiar, a T-square is when you have two planets, or let's say points opposite each other, and there is a planet in the middle squaring both of the two placements in the opposition. It forms a sort of triangle, but it's a triangle of conflict, right? So in this case, there's an opposition between Saturn and Lilith, Saturn in Pisces, Lilith in Virgo. Focal point, which is the name of the planet that's in between, is Mercury in Sagittarius. Then Venus in Libra sextiles that Mercury in Sagittarius. Neptune in Pisces trines the new moon itself, right? And everything it has related to it, so that includes Mars. And then also sextiling in this case. It's trining the new moon, sextiling Uranus in Taurus, okay? And last but definitely not least, last two placements and aspects that are worthy of note. Jupiter retrograde in Taurus is sextiling that Lilith in Virgo. And Neptune in Pisces is sextiling Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto working its way out of Capricorn at last, but still Pluto in Capricorn. Now, one of the first things that you can expect, you're going to be seeing this at night, so this might have happened already, right? Is that we might end up acting upon hidden, deep-seated urges, deep-seated emotions, especially. Or acting upon the world sort of in secret based on some surprising new material circumstance. That's one way that this can play out. Another way that this can play out is that we might do altruistic work with our bodies, our health, our values, our material possessions, but in secret. It's like hidden charity, right? That's another thing that's another way that this can express itself. There's also something here about expressing, for example, hidden emotions or deep-seated things about our personalities with humor that helps change our lives, okay? Or that illustrates us on something that maybe we were trying to figure out, some sort of mystery. But it might very well contradict our values, risk our health, or our ownership of certain material things, right? And it might make it harder to live in a way that is both rebellious and altruistic, but sensual, right? Putting our money where our mouth is, based on some things that we realize about our hidden motivations, our hidden emotions, our quite likely also not just hidden desires, but hidden anger more than anything else, or hidden fears, okay? Alternatively, material surprise might make us hide things that we gain pleasure from, or our aggression, or something that's very authentic to us, maybe even ways that we have already changed. Due to some material circumstance, we might choose to hide these things. And I really hope that is not the way that it plays out for you, because other placements and other aspects in the chart point to this being kind of fatal, okay? Possibly also unwittingly being just revealed and then getting in trouble because some way in which you were not presenting yourself as authentic comes out to the public, okay? So I hope that the way that this plays out for you is not that you decide to hide something that really needs to be expressed, or that you don't get exposed for something that you've been hiding for a while that needs to stay hidden. Because in that sense, then this period of the next 2 weeks could play out very badly, could be very bad for all of us, really. Let me see. It's also unsafe and unhealthy to respond to whatever material surprise happens today. If you go through any sort of surprising material event, it's also not advised to respond to it by hiding things, because it can also very much damage your mental health. There's that, Neptune is trining that new moon and Mars in Scorpio. So be very careful with what you hide, because it might drive you insane. Okay? Quite differently, it's more that the ways that we change or have changed aspects of our sexualities, of our desires, things that we very privately tend to hold but that bring us joy and happiness, should help us make certain spiritual or creative artistic realizations, possibly revisions to the way that we work with those things. I want to then also talk about that T-square I mentioned, right? With Mercury as the focal point. Mercury is not in a good place when it is in Sagittarius, but given the context, the circumstances, it might actually be in our favor for it to be this way, because I think that precisely some of the reasons why Mercury in Sagittarius is a bad placement can actually make the opposition that it's related to easier for us. Because you see, Saturn in Pisces means that if we want to grow, we want to evolve, we want to improve with things that are creative, spiritual, so on, intuitive, right? That we need to maintain discipline, maintain firm boundaries, and enforce them. But that Lilith in Virgo says that we are going to be very tempted today and for the coming weeks to use perfectionistic or practical sounding excuses to avoid maintaining that consistent practice of intuition, spirituality, creativity, whatever the case may be. We might use, having or not having certain resources. It does form a trine to Uranus and Taurus, right? We might use that as an excuse to not do what needs to be done in order to continue practicing those intuitive spiritual things. And the way that Mercury in Sagittarius as a mediator between these two forces can work in our favor is because one of the ways in which Mercury in Sagittarius is a bad placement is because the archetype of Sagittarius includes having a bit of a tunnel vision mentality of dogmatism, because it's a sign of also philosophy and religion specifically, not the sign of spirituality or connection to God. That's Pisces. Sagittarius is the sign of religion itself. And normally this would not be a great placement for Mercury, but since it is mediating between a Pisces Virgo issue, it might work in our favor because it will probably be easier to only focus on the result that we want, where we want to be, and not get lost in the journey, not get lost in the details, not let the excuses, not let the material circumstances serve as an excuse to stop practicing something that should be already working in terms of spirituality, intuition, creativity, art. Okay? So it's more like, instead, having that focused mentality and that focused way of communicating is likely to also help us use that Virgo energy more to prove naysayers wrong, to respond to haters by being more excellent, by being more disciplined, by applying this creativity, intuition, spirituality in a more efficient way. This is also a very good time to speak in a way that's super straightforward, which could be a pitfall of Mercury in Sagittarius, but this is a good time to do it, actually, because that sextile to Libra says that people are far more inclined to relate to us in a way that's more forgiving, that's more polite, that's more considerate, right? And that even if we're a little savage in the way that we express ourselves, that we might also relate to people in a way that's more polite, forgiving, diplomatic, right? So it should land on the right ears, so to speak, or be read by the right eyes. Last notes that I have to mention here, in terms of the aspects that I'm seeing and so on. So we should also be in the middle of a process, or finishing a process of reviewing things that we have gained from artistic practice, from creativity, from intuition, from that spiritual discipline, and changes to our careers, changes to our structures, changes to our reputation may very well help us solidify this information and filter the truth from the lies, or filter, whatever is just bias from what is actually fact that has come through intuition and not through logic and empirical evidence. But it can also mean that something that we realize today by creative, intuitive, spiritual, artistic means finally convinces us that we have to make changes to our careers, to our structures, to our reputations. Okay? It can play either way. But I think that doing the math with everything else that we're seeing for today, it's likelier to be that the changes and the material surprises happen, and more internally, we're challenged to react appropriately. React in a way that makes use of this change in a way that's positive for us, rather than putting up excuses to let this defeat and crush us. Okay? I will be posting this at night, as I said. I hope that you all have a great day and a great night, and I will speak to you again by these means in the next 2 weeks. Ashe. One final note before I go. So I also drew cards for this new moon. Expect advice from most likely 2 women in your lives. One of them is advice coming from a charismatic woman that is very attractive, and it comes from a place of experience, something she's done or something she's been through that's relevant to what you're going through. And the other one, the advice is probably coming from our mother or a water sign woman. That's the most likely scenario. It doesn't have to be, but and that piece of advice comes from a place of empathy. Okay, that comes from recognizing and honoring your feelings and your emotional needs. Have a blessed 2 weeks. Make good use of the curiosity that you are garnering, because that's something else that came up. And I hope to speak to you soon. I hope it all goes well. Bye-bye.